Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
Are you free, Mrs. Slocum? I'm free, and I am unanimous in that.
What the hell are we talking about today?
Are you being served?
I don't recognize that for some reason. All right. Welcome to another episode of Nerdery and Murdery, episode 164.
Big 164. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. Before we jump into anything, I just have to say to our producer, William, happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
So I've been texting William happy Father's Day every day since Father's Day.
Every day.
Multiple times during the day.
Yes.
Because it's funny to me.
The last response was, I hate you.
There's been other very violent responses since then. But so sorry I was running late this morning. So, I love golf now. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I really like is golf balls that have alignment stripes on them. It helps you on your driving. It helps you on your putting because you can use those alignment stripes to line up your feet and the ball so that, where you're lining up is where you're going to hit.
Okay.
And a lot of balls don't come, they might have a little tiny strip on them, but it's not a lot. I really like Callaways because they have the triple track, and there's three lines on them. I wish I had one here to show you, but anyway.
Callaway, if you'd like to sponsor us.
Yes, Callaway. I really like the TaylorMade Tour Response stripe because it's got a stripe all the way around the ball, but they're expensive.
Who would think that stripe paint would be that much more expensive?
Oh, I know. Well, it's not just the stripe paint, but it's the design of the ball, the construction of it, everything like that. Whether it's what the core is, what the skin is, everything like that. But anyway, I love found balls out on the golf course. Those are free.
Yes.
You find them; they're free. So I bought a little tool that I could put the golf ball in and draw my stripes on any ball.
Oh, nice.
So that's what I was doing this morning. I was in the middle of painting golf balls, and I didn't want to stop what I was doing. And unfortunately, I got some Sharpies off Amazon yesterday to do this with, and half the pack was already out of ink. That disturbed me. So Sharpie Corporation, bad.
Bad Sharpie.
Bad Sharpie. So I was painting those this morning. I did get 3 balls yesterday from a golf shop that I wanted to try out. They're Callaways, which I do like Callaways. I like the TaylorMade most, but I mean, honestly, at like $48-50 for 12 balls, that's a lot.
$50 for 12 balls?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, good Lord. If you get the Titleist, I think it's TPX 5, I think they are. Those are like 70. Yeah. But Callaway is generally less expensive. They're still good balls. I like Callaways. And I got some Callaway 360s that almost have a stripe all the way around the ball. Anyway, I got 3 of them just to try them out. In one hole, I lost 2 of them in the water, and not like on the edge of the water where I can use my ball retriever and get it out. Deep in the water.
Like right in the middle.
Yes. And then I lost another one in the water later. So all 3 that I bought yesterday, gone yesterday. So that's why they can get really expensive, because you lose them in the water and everything like that. But anyway, so that's what I was doing earlier this morning. I'm sorry. I didn't want to stop what I was doing.
Fine. I was watching Stargate for research.
Awesome. Hurricane Beryl missed us. It landed about 300 miles north of us. We got a lot of rain out of it. And with the rain,
that's not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Well, with the exception with the rain comes the gnats.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. We had a bunch of rain on Monday when landfall hit. And on Tuesday, I was taking my golf lesson, so I was out on the driving range, and it was literally clouds of gnats. I mean, you could see just these clouds. And I played after my lesson, and it was literally like having a second shirt of carcasses, just all over. It just all over. They go in your nose, they go in your ears, they fly against you, and it's just the gnats are terrible. And after rain, it's just worse. I don't know why after rain it's so bad with gnats.
Well, probably their breeding cycle's probably really quick.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? After a couple of days after rain, and boom, they're in the air.
Yeah. Thankfully, there was another hurricane that was behind Beryl, which apparently petered out. So we may be a while. My sister told me that this is supposed to be one of the worst hurricane seasons in years.
Yes.
So we'll see if we get affected by any. I mean, a lot of people in Houston are still without power.
Yes. A lot of places in Houston it's still underwater.
Yes.
That city's they've been living in a swamp for years. They figured it out by now.
Well, it's not like you raised the city.
No, but they also didn't have city planning until about 25 years ago.
Well, sorry for...
That's how come you'll have a forest and an office building and houses.
Yeah.
In Houston.
Well, sorry for anybody in Houston that has been dealing with week-long power. I know a couple of people there that have been without power most of the week. I didn't see if any of them have been restored.
Well, I mean, what was the hot point? Like 2.5 million people, and hurricane's going to knock out power.
Yeah.
And what's terrible is it's probably 100 degrees with 70% humidity down there.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, that can kill people.
That's what we're like every day. I mean, when I went out on 4th of July golfing, I think by the time we were done, it was 109, and I was just I was whipped. I got heat exhaustion on the 4th of July pretty good. Because we were out there on the course for like 6 hours.
Ugh.
I had the worst game of my life. So, but hey, we just finished recording exclusive 20 where Zig covered G.I. Joe, which kind of leads me into one I think you should cover at some point too, because I think it was a really cool cartoon and toy line, is Mask.
We did talk about Mask.
We did do Mask. You're right.
Yeah, when I did like the 10 toy lines, I should never do that many at once.
That's right, because you covered it as part of a big list. That's right.
Yeah, like 10 forgotten toy lines. I think I probably will do one on just Mask.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah. And they're smaller. The figures in Mask were smaller, so they can make smaller vehicles.
Yeah,
but not much.
Yeah,
it was like 3-inch.
So awesome. Alrighty. With that, I'll let you take over on the nerdy side of the house.
Excellent. Today we're going to talk about a British comedy. We're going to talk about Are You Being Served? It is a British television sitcom that was broadcast from 1972 to 1985. It was created and written by David Croft, who also served as executive producer and director, and Jeremy Lloyd. Michael Knowles and John Chapman also wrote certain episodes. Produced by the BBC, the series starred Molly Sugden, Trevor Bannister, Frank Thornton, John Inman, Wendy Richard, Arthur Brahm, Nicholas Smith, Larry Martin, Harold Bennett, and Arthur English. It is set in London. The show follows the misadventures and mishaps of the staff and their regular rotating series of customers at the retail ladies and gentlemen's clothing department in the flagship department store of the fictional chain called Grace Brothers. The series was broadcast on the BBC for 10 series, totaling 69 episodes between September 8th, 1972 and April 1st of 1985. Including 5 Christmas specials, the sitcom proved a ratings hit with the UK audiences and gained international recognition when broadcast across several English-speaking countries, including Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the Republic of Ireland, and the United States, the later gaining in a loyal following when PBS television stations began airing reruns in the mid-1980s alongside other British sitcoms. So, Are You Being Served?
This was a funny show.
Yeah, it was.
It was a very funny
really
show.
Was.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. It's people working in a department store, and it's just funny, and it's laced with innuendos. And what's funny is, Jeremy Lloyd and David Croft. I always use Lloyd and Croft. As soon as they got done doing Are You Being Served in 1985, they went on to do Allo Allo. And then as soon as they got done doing Allo Allo, they did the the sequel series of Are You Being Served, which was called Grace and Favor in England, but over here it was called Are You Being Served Again? So yeah, Lloyd and Croft basically worked from 72 to like 92 straight on, just in television. It's like, man, that's 20 years, but it's only really 2 series. Are You Being Served was one of several series predominant of the period that was adapted into a feature film release. It was adapted into the 1977 film of the same name and was also followed by a spin-off series, Grace and Favor, with the same main cast in 91 and 92. In 2004, it was ranked 20th in a television countdown of Britain's best sitcoms. A one-off episode with a new cast was created in 2016, both the sitcom, including its pilot and Christmas specials. The spinoff and the film have since been released on DVD. Now, over here, the film ended up being like an extra long episode of Are You Being Served? So I think they broke it down into 2 parts. I have not seen much of the 2016 series.
I haven't seen it at all.
But I think it was just a couple of like a Christmas special and an episode, and then they were done. They just wanted to bring that back. But as far as the original 69 episodes, I think I've seen every one multiple times. I remember when our PBS station first started broadcasting it, it was like 1987, 88, somewhere around in there. And they broadcast the first episode, which was in black and white, which I thought was odd because all the stuff on it said it was in color. It was in color, but the BBC in the 70s, in their infinite wisdom, wiped a bunch of tapes, which is why we lost a bunch of Doctor Who. When they went to go sell it to the American PBS stations, they only had the black and white coverage because of the way their color works. They have to film them with different cameras. It's not that way over here, or it wasn't. So yeah, so the first episode is in black and white, and everything else is in color. But yeah, I thought, man, this show's really funny. It focused on the lives of the staff of the fictional department store Grace Brothers, who work with in the clothing department of men's and women's, respectively, alongside the senior staff, maintenance workers, and the store owner. The sitcom focuses on the staff dealing with various issues such as frictions between each other, ideas to improve sales, and the effects of local events that impacted the store's running. A key humorous base of the series was a parody of the British class system, which permeated a range of relationships and interactions between the show's characters, such as conversations between the maintenance men and sales personnel or management. The episode rarely featured locations outside the store, mostly being focused on the shop floor used by the 2 departments and the staff-only areas. Characters also rarely addressed each other by their first names, even after work, instead of using the surname in the manner of Mr., Miss, or Mrs. There was also a lot of sexual innuendo, misunderstandings, mistaken identity, farce, and occasional slapstick. In addition, there were sight gags generated by outrageous costumes, which the characters were sometimes required to wear for store promotions, and gaudy store displays, sometimes featuring malfunctioning robot mannequins. The show is remembered for its prolific use of double entendres. Alongside the comedy, some episodes also conducted specialized dance routines, which were choreographed either to be natural or sometimes comedic in effect. The idea for the show came from Lloyd's brief period in the early 1950s working at Simpsons of Piccadilly, a clothing store which traded for over 60 years until its closing in 1999. The inspiration for the store has been credited to the former Clements of Waterford, where the concept of the floor walker character Captain Peacock was devised. The pilot episode was created as part of the Comedy Playhouse series. Although the BBC had originally chosen not to broadcast the program, the pilot was used as a filler during the 1972 Summer Olympics when the coverage of the games was interrupted by the Munich massacre on September 8th of 1972, leading to a full series being produced. The pilot episode was repeated before the first series began on March 14th, 1973. Although the first series was aired in the same time slot as Coronation Street on ITV, consequently receiving relatively little attention. The repeat shows later in the year were much more successful. The show became a ratings hit, and after a successful 13-year run, Are You Being Served came to an end on the 1st of April, 1985. Of the original cast, only Frank Thornton, Molly Sugden, John Inman, Wendy Richards, and Nicholas Smith appeared in all 69 episodes. The same 5 later featured in the sequel sitcom Grace and Favor, again over here known as Are You Being Served Again. The cast performed in characters for a stage sketch of the BBC One program Variety on June 19th, 1976. Almost immediately after the cancellation of Are You Being Served in 1985, the cast began suggesting a spinoff to Jeremy Lloyd and David Croft. Though all felt the department store format was exhausted, it was suggested the characters could be moved to a new location in 1992. Most of the original cast returned for Grace and Favor, again known as Are You Being Served Over Here, or Are You Being Served Again over here. The new series followed the characters after young Mr. Grace's death when they were forced to run a hotel in a dilapidated manor house that was purchased using their pension fund. Grace and Faber ran for 2 series. A lot of the malfunctioning mannequins, the innuendo, the breakdown of the British class system. It had a lot in it, and it was also very, very funny, and is still very funny. Molly Sugden, her character, Mrs. Slocum, who was basically a pink-haired lady, whose hair had gone white, and they dye it all sorts of weird colors.
She went purple at one point, too.
Oh, she kept going different colors. After the first season, she started wearing wigs because the first season, she was actually dyeing her hair, and she went to go pick up her kids at school, and all the kids were making fun of her, or fun of her kids, because when she showed up in the car, she had different spots of color all over her hair. So she's like, okay, we need to start doing something else. So they gave her wigs. And she kept her natural hair after that, after all the color spots grew out. But it was also really damaging to her hair.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that first season, that's her head. But after that, he went wigs, and that was the whole idea. It would be blue or purple or pink or, bright red. And in this lady's costume. In the show originally, the concept of the show was it was the men's department. And the pilot episode is the ladies' department moving into the men's department because they just had to share the space. So the ladies was on the left. If from the audience perspective, the ladies is on the left, the gentleman's is on the right. And they used that same set for years and years and years. Trevor Bannister, who was kind of the breakout star, he left after about 6 or 7 seasons. He got replaced with Mr. Spooner. Again, I don't think, in some cases they never even mentioned the people's first names.
Mm-hmm.
It was Mr. Grace or Captain Peacock. And the idea of a floor walker in a department store, those really don't exist anymore. It wasn't the manager walking around. The manager sat in an office, Mr. Rumbold. But the floor walker was like an intermediate, like an assistant manager who was always on the floor looking to direct the customers in the right direction. This was something that was prevalent in department stores up until probably the 90s. I know they kind of started going away after a while, but yeah, it was a big deal for a long time to be, because that was a promotion. You may not have been management, but you weren't, sales staff anymore. It was like an intermediate. Now I think they're all just like assistant managers and stuff like that. But yeah, it ran for a long time. It was very successful. They made the movie again. We got to see the movie over here, but it was, broken up. And it was one of those shows that our local PBS station, KERA, showed, God, for years. And I'd turn it on, and if it was one I had only seen once, I'd watch it. But if it was one I'd seen 3 or 4 times, I'd watch something else. Or just leave it on and wait for the next British comedy to come on.
Right.
But yeah, that's about it for Are You Being Served? Not much. I mean, it ran for 13 seasons. Every episode was the same. It's like Three's Company.
That's what I loved about KERA back in the day was Sunday nights was British Comedy Night.
Yes.
And I got to see a lot of these, including Are You Being Served? And there was a rotation of, whether it was Are You Being Served or Faulty Towers or The Good Life, blah, 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 blah. And Zig, I sent you a text just a little while ago, brought to mind some other British comedy shows you should cover, give you some fodder there.
Thank you.
I think the ones I listed are really good ones to cover. But the British comedies are so good. Some people can't. Some people don't. Oh, you like that list?
Yeah.
Some people don't like them because they don't understand them.
Mhm.
as much. They don't understand the humor, or they don't understand the dialect.
Mhm.
They can't understand what they're saying. But honestly, if you give the British comedies a try, there are some really, really good ones out there, and we've covered some, and hopefully Zig will take that list,
Yeah.
because I think there's some others we can cover.
Oh yeah, yeah. IT Crowd Chef. We definitely need to talk about Benny Hill. Benny Hill
Yeah.
ran for years.
Yeah.
This one, to me, this one is a great introduction to British comedy. Like I wouldn't throw someone into Monty Python right away, which is what we did here.
Hmm.
Which is totally not the right way to go about that, I think. But yeah, I would not throw someone into the depths of Monty Python, because they'd be just like, what? But like this, it's pretty cool. It's easy to understand. Um, they use received British pronunciation, or sounding posh, as it
Hmm.
were,
Hmm.
except for one character or two
Right.
characters. Um, and one of them is trying to sound posh, so it's pretty funny. It's and these guys all loved working together. They loved the material. It was funny. It was fun. Um, John Inman, um, I guess he was like the first openly gay. Oh, okay, so he wasn't openly gay in the show, but it was. Let's just say it was hinted at quite severely. I mean, conversation with somebody's like, you know them and I know you. And he'd look at the dude and go, a couple of drinks last night doesn't necessarily mean I know you. It's like,
Uh,
oh, okay. Well, yeah, you got real close on that one.
and did we cover Red Dwarf?
We have not covered Red Dwarf.
There we go. That's another one for sure we need to cover.
Red Dwarf.
For sure we need to cover. So
Yeah, they just
awesome.
did a little movie.
Yeah.
Year before last. Yeah, it's pretty good too.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking us down a trip on another British comedy.
Thank you, sir.
Love most of them, so really appreciate that.
Yes.
With that, I'll take over on the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off Medium, NDTV World, The Independent, and the Daily Mail, and this is the story of Brian Cohee.
Brian Cohee.
So in March of 2021, Terry Cohee was in her son's bedroom when she noticed something strange sticking out of his cupboard. Her son had always been troubled, showing signs of autism, ADHD, depression, and a fascination with the morbid and macabre. But she thought it was something that was harmless. She thought he was, and she did think he was interested in becoming a crime scene investigator. He was 19, and these were probably the interests most frustrated teens had. But as Terry took a closer look at the object wrapped in plastic, she noted that the protruding specimen was a human ear. Further investigation, Brian had stored a decapitated human head in his cupboard. But that was not all. There was a second bag that had human hands inside of it. Terrified, she grabbed the second bag, she placed it in the sink, then she called 911 and reported what she had found while Brian was outside in his car, having just arrived home. Just a few months before this, Terry had found something strange in her son's backpack, and while she was looking through it, she found a hammer, zip ties, and duct tape. She was suspicious, but it didn't point to any solid evidence. Terry did notice there was blood on the side of the backpack, but when she asked Brian about it, he said it was fake blood from a theater kid. His father, Brian Sr., had also noticed the blood, but this time it was in the trunk of Brian Jr.'s car. Brian simply brushed it off, saying he had accidentally cut his finger. So the dismembered head belonged to the late Warren Barnes. It was on February 21st that Brian Cohee murdered the 16-year-old Warren Barnes, who was a homeless man he had encountered sleeping near Crosby Avenue. He stabbed Barnes over 40 times, only pausing when he began to grow excited from the rush. And Barnes had even asked him why he was doing it, to which Brian responded, "Because I felt like it."
Ugh.
Deputies did catch up with Brian outside and told him that his parents had called due to something they'd discovered in his room, and Brian openly admitted to what he had been hiding. The police asked Brian, quote, "Your parents have concerns over some stuff they may have found in your room. What could that be?" At which point Brian calmly replied, "Yeah, I believe so. A human head and hands from that fellow that went missing. I murdered him with a knife."
Wow. Wow.
Police did ask him why, and he added, "I always wondered what murder would feel like." The police would locate the rest of Warren's remains beneath an overpass soon after. Brian had tried to dispose of the rest of the body at the Blue Heron boat ramp, but his car became stuck, and instead he just discarded what was left. The officers located Warren's severed arms only minutes later, and they discovered his severed leg down at the boat ramp. At the secondary location, officers found Brian's submerged car, and Brian was taken into custody and interrogated. From the moment he stepped in the interrogation room, he seemed calm and stoic, only anxiously tapping his foot up and down, and he calmly narrated to a detective how he killed Warren Barnes on the night of February 27th. And it was a full moon, and Brian decided to take a drive. After he'd cruised around for about an hour and a half, he arrived at a bridge, and while driving under the overpass near the railroad tracks, Brian saw the shape of Warren Barnes. Brian then admitted that he grabbed his knife and put on 3 layers of gloves, which would indicate Brian had been planning this for some time and came prepared. He further incriminated himself by explaining that plastic gloves are too thin and often leave fingerprints behind. He went on to tell detectives that he pulled Warren's canvas back and stabbed the man in the neck. And at first, Warren was panicking, repeatedly asking why Brian was trying to harm him, but Brian was unfazed and kept stabbing him in the neck. Brian then demonstrated the motion of stabbing to the detective, getting on his hands and knees while thrusting the imaginary knife forward. Brian claimed Warren couldn't fight back and that the killing was surprisingly easy, and he said he barely even broke a sweat. He added during the stabbing he was making animalistic noises and growling as he stabbed the defenseless man, and then Brian smiled as he described how excited he was and how the adrenaline entered his body. After Warren had died from his wounds, Brian kept repeating the words stinky and dirty, but didn't know why. And then after he killed him, Brian undressed Warren before slitting open his abdomen so he could see his guts. When Brian described this to the detective, Brian said, quote, "They're really pink," before he started laughing. He then went on to describe how he cut off Warren's head before giving him a Glasgow smile, which is the Joker, the Joker smile. And then Brian stabbed at Warren's eyes before cutting off his hands and placing them in one of the Ziploc bags he had brought with him. He then attempted to dismember Warren, but found it difficult, so he left the body there, only taking the head with him and the hands, which he carefully wrapped up and placed in his closet. He threw his bloody clothes in the washing machine and tried to go to sleep, but something was bothering him. Really? He realized he had a hole in one of his gloves and was afraid it left a partial print. So he drove back to the scene, picked up Warren's body, and drove it to the boat ramp where the car subsequently got stuck. He had tried to remove Warren's body from the trunk of the car and dump the body in the water. And he tried to reverse his car back out, but he found he couldn't, and so Brian left the car partially submerged in the water. He confessed in his interrogation that for years he had been obsessed with murder and knew why he wanted to try it. He said he'd been influenced after reading about cases like Ted Bundy and the Zodiac Killer. But what was clear to the detectives in the room was that Brian had known exactly what he was doing. He was incredibly articulate and level-headed about committing an atrocious slaughter of another human being. And he also confessed in 2018 that he had practiced killing a stray black cat that had wandered onto his property.
There you go. There's one.
Killing of animals. He kept the body for 3 days before disposing it in the trash. As for his reason for choosing a homeless person as a victim, Brian stated that nobody would miss them, but he would be wrong, as the 69-year-old Warren Barnes had multiple friends in the community who had reported him missing. Warren was a familiar figure to Grand Junction residents. He was known for his outgoing personality and love of reading, adding that some of the businesses in the city would put out a chair for Barnes so he could sit and read. He was known in Grand Junction as the reading man, and passersby would stop to chat about what he was reading, and then they would bid him a good day, and he invariably responded, "And you also." So when Brian Cohee was brought to trial, he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, citing his ADHD, major depressive disorder, and diagnosis of mild Asperger's as the reason behind the killing. Two psychologists with the state of Colorado concluded that he was not insane. However, one psychologist hired by the defense claimed that Brian had suffered from a psychotic episode. So, at the time of the murder, he was legally insane. That's what that psychologist was saying. The prosecution presented the theory that Brian had planned to commit a murder at least 6 months in advance, and this was evident in the homemade murder kit he had made, as well as the preparations and items he had taken with him on the night he killed Warren, such as the Ziploc bags and multiple pairs of gloves. And the interrogation footage was also enough to damn him. The jury deliberated for 2 days and ultimately found Brian guilty of first-degree murder in February of 2023, and he received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. When walking out of the courtroom, Terry Cohee expressed sympathies to the victim's family, and she said, quote, "I would just like to express our family's deep and sincere sympathies to the community and the family of Mr. Barnes." Furthermore, Judge Richard Gurley, who presided over the case, called it one of the most horrific he had seen in his 37 years with the criminal justice system. He stated it was evident that Brian Cohee suffered from mental problems and viewed things differently. However, he did agree that the murder was on the 21-year-old's mind for quite some time. Despite his troubled background and mental health issues, Brian's meticulous planning and cold-blooded actions reveal a disturbing depth of darkness within inside him. His detailed confession, coupled with his prior fascination with notorious criminals, paints a picture of a young man who is not only aware of his actions, but also seemingly detached from the gravity of his crimes. He does remain incarcerated to this day at the Buena Vista Correctional Complex, and he's the subject of a shocking true crime documentary, Parents Discover Teen Son's Horrifying Secret, on YouTube, on the YouTube channel Explore With Us. A memorial sculpture was installed in Warren Barnes' memory by his friends and family in the location he used to spend most of his time, close to Main Street in Grand Junction. It was created by the artist Tim Navin, and the installation consists of a chair shaded by a tree with a pile of books lying on the seat. Tim is a metal artist who was once homeless himself, and he spent 285 hours creating the Warren Barnes memorial sculpture. In tribute to Warren's characteristic reply to people he spoke to, one of the books bears the title, "And You Also." And Barnes' sister, Geraldine Shipp, stated, quote, "He was a man who was loved by the community and family. Nothing can replace Warren, but hopefully Brian Cohee can never, ever have a chance to hurt someone else." And that's the story of Brian Cohee.
Well, thank you for that, sir. That's very disturbing.
It is.
Yeah, because there's no signs.
No, well, I mean, he had the killing of cats, but why did he have the killing of cats?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you've got the abuse, which will lead to the killing of animals because you're trying to get that power back.
Yeah.
There's humiliation. I mean, there wasn't anything I saw in his background that said what happened. So I don't know. Did we maybe have a head trauma?
That's what I was thinking.
Wasn't
Maybe
reported.
Yeah, maybe he hit his head. Because
I think Brian Cohee is someone who needs to be studied.
Yes.
Figure out the why.
Again, this is why I don't think they should kill psycho killers. I think they should stick them in some place where they can learn how to stop making them.
Right.
It's like, okay, you're incarcerated. Okay, we're not going to put you in general pop. We're going to put you in this thing, but you got to talk to these people every day.
Yeah, I would like to see if something could ever find out, because I'm curious as to his psychology, what happened that twisted him somewhere.
Yeah, and especially now that we understand quite a lot more about the human genome just in the last 10 years. We can track that if it is I still don't think it's a genetic component. You know what I mean? I don't think there's a genetic component there. I think it's all nurture.
So other side of that coin, we had an episode that I covered where it seems it was genetic. It was a kid whose father had committed multiple crimes before him, and then he got into it, and there wasn't a whole lot of abuse in his home that I recall. This was a long time ago that we did that episode. But I don't know. I agree with you. I would just like to know what key is turned.
What broke bad? What broke him bad? Because it sounds like it doesn't sound like his home life was that.
I didn't see anything that his home life was bad. No, I didn't.
And we may not have all the information. No,
and that's what I said way back at the beginning when we first started. The reason these stories fascinate me is exactly that, the psychology behind them, of what happened, what has turned these keys. And, I do find it very interesting where we have very definitive things, whether or not the McDonald triad is really true or not for serial killers. I think it paints a fascinating picture that you kind of tend to see these things over and over and over again.
The same thing over and over again. And this kid looks like he was a serial killer. He was a serial killer in the making.
Probably. I think he was probably, one in the making.
Yeah, they just caught him after the first one.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, again, thank you. That'll take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more information about us on nerderyandmurdery.com. That's our hub with everything we do for the show. You can find links to the items we talked about, plus pictures, as well as the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often updates.
Yes, we have episodes and documentaries about Are You Being Served on this particular episode.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Sure.
You can also find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your Nerdery and Murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something from there. That, along with the donations from our patrons, you can find the link to our Patreon. The merchandise and our patrons do help with the costs that are associated with the show. It does have a cost to keep us on the air and keep bringing out these topics that everybody so much loves. So we appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It helps us and helps others find the content that we may be discussing. So with that,
I have been Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery.
Cue the music.